Okay, so in the last video, we walked through all 5 automation action types. I had mentioned that of these, calculating a value using formulas as being pretty powerful. So that's what we're going to do today. Calculate a value lets you write an expression that computes a result and writes it to a field automatically every time that trigger fires. You can think of it as giving your automation a brain instead of just a clipboard. So as we know, Layer already has formula fields where you define a formula once and it always displays a calculated result. Calculate a value in automations is different, and we'll get to that. But just as a quick refresher, this is what it looks like when a formula is directly in a category as a field. So I set up a formula here. If I were to go to edit this field, here's the formula that I'm using to evaluate whether or not there's a need for additional quantities of rooms by evaluating NASF and comparing it against an input value. If so, how much of a surplus should there be? If not, nothing will be added to the quantity. That value will report here. And then we could come up here to our edit visible fields and come down to evaluate for surplus. We can then place that surplus evaluation wherever we need it in our table view. Let's go over here and check this out. Now we're getting our reported surplus. Now this is hard-coded based on the surplus value that we included here. But instead of just a text value input, you could come into your formula and configure this to connect and pull data from anywhere else within your room data sheets or another category through a relationship depending on your specific project needs. So I've really got to stress that the distinction is super important because in a formula configured within a category as a field, this reports essentially as live and always read-only unless you make modifications within this formula. Now we're going to take a quick look at calculated automations. So we're going to come up here to the automations tab. Calculated automations write a value at a point in time, which means it works with fields that need to stay editable or get pushed back to Revit. So that's why we configure these here in the automations tab. I've created a new automation. It's going to run over the room survey category. I'm going to have this trigger an action when a field updates using the trigger element, calculating a value, and I'm going to update this value to notes. I'm going to write this formula such that it takes from my room survey the floor notes, the base notes, the wall notes, and the ceiling notes, and writes them to an overall note collection that can then be emailed to someone else on the team or leveraged in plenty of other ways. Now, the goal isn't to show you how to collate notes. That can be done through document views. The goal is to show you how to utilize formulas through automations that automatically are triggered based on other events within your project. This can be set up in so many different ways across many, many different fields, across any type of category. And it can also have interaction with your Revit model. So I'm going to come up to room survey and I'm going to hit edit formula. This opens up the formula editor. Now our goal is to concatenate these together. So I'll look for concatenate. I'll place that down. I will search for our notes and we've got our base notes. Why that? We'll look for our floor notes, our wall notes, and our ceiling notes. Once we wire up this concatenate node to the results, go ahead and hit save. And once again, we're updating the notes within that category. In order to trigger this though in a smart way, come back up here to the fields optional. And I've made it such that whenever the survey status is updated, such as move to complete, current summary of these notes are concatenated and pushed to this notes category. So to see this in action, test that it works, I'm going to head over to room survey category, listing all rooms. I'm going to check out conference 123 and see where my progress is at. Looks like I've attached some photos. We've got details in floor material, floor condition, the items for each of those things. And we filled out our floor notes, our base notes, our wall notes, ceiling notes, but our notes summary is left blank. Now, as I'm going through and completing my status, if I were to change this to complete, the automation ran in the background, taking and concatenating each of the notes from above into this overall notes summary. As we explored in other videos, beyond this, we can cascade other actions. So once that note field is automatically populated with this action based on this trigger that we've set up in this video, we can add another action and do any of these. So what we've just shown you to date is a fairly simple approach to an automation, just concatenating some notes into a summary note and then updating someone else. However, you can leverage this as much as you want and take it as far as you want. As a quick example of this, I wanted to chain a create an element based off of this, selecting the room datasheets category. I wanted to auto-generate the created element name and calculate based on a value. So I created a field called work cost estimate and created a formula. And this formula takes a work cost estimate value and compares it against $25,000. If this reports that the work cost estimate is over this threshold, this will pipe a response result created as high cost to coordinate. If not, it'll be low cost and proceed. That can be chained off the back of the reaction of the summary of the notes or any other preceding trigger and action series. So something like this is pretty high leverage because you can start to automate costs, outreach to individuals who need to be looped into coordination. You can even immediately send emails and summaries of all of these items. So to show you what that looks like quick in the room survey here, I've got a work cost estimate that I've placed after evaluating the issues with all of the rooms. And when I set that to complete, it triggers and it pushes to room data sheets, all data sheets, and fill in this work cost estimate. From there, it would trigger an output of high cost coordinate to this location or low cost to proceed. This can be traced back here via relationships. So that's calculating a value using automation formulas. The list of full available formula functions is in the layer docs at layer.team/docs. Look under formulas there. If you have any specific use cases you're trying to solve, drop it in the comments, shoot us an email. We're always happy to engage and help out.